going on, everybody? So for those that don't know me, my name is Stacy and the name of my channel is Stace Cadet. Stace Cadet was a nickname that was given to me when I was a little girl from my cousin. So it just kind of stuck, and I figured, hey, why not make my social media name after what my nickname was when I was little. So to kick off the 2021 season, I kind of wanted to do a garden tour just to show you and to keep a record for myself what it looked like at the beginning of the garden season, because it's great to look and see how fast things grow and how far you've come along during a growing season. To start with, I figured we would look at some colder weather crops, some spring crops that I had planted a few weeks ago. So in this bed you will notice some kale and some cabbage. I have some red Russian kale, I have some dinosaur kale, and I have some blue Scotch kale. And then there is also 4 cabbages as well. There's a cabbage right here, a cabbage right there, a cabbage right there, and a cabbage right there. I did plant some cauliflower in this bed as well, but it really didn't survive the cold weather. We'll come over and look. The one that's doing okay, halfway decent, right there. In the bed right next to it is where I planted the potatoes. And you can see, if you get real close in here, you can see that the potatoes are starting to sprout. There's some bigger sprouts, more sprouts. And I think there was some down here as well. Oh, there we go. There's another sprout. So that's exciting that those are finally coming up. Here is some of the onions that I had planted a couple weeks ago. Right after I had planted these onions, we had 3 to 6 inches of snow. So I'd have to say they're doing pretty good for having 3 inches of snow sitting on them. They'll perk up within the next couple of weeks, so I'm not too concerned about it. Here's the leeks as well, same thing. They'll perk up within the next couple of weeks. Right here is an oregano plant that is a perennial that comes back every year. It gets pretty big if I don't keep it trimmed. Now let's go check out the strawberries. So here is my strawberry bed. I keep bird netting over top of it to help protect the strawberries, but as you can see, we have some blooms. I can taste those strawberries already. I have some dill that is reseeding itself in this pot that I had planted it in last year. Here's my asparagus bed, which you can see we got some asparagus sprouting up in there. I planted these asparagus probably, this will be my 3rd year, so I'm excited because asparagus gets bigger and bigger every year, and usually you can't really harvest off of it until the 3rd year. You can beforehand, but they suggest that you don't until they get at least the thickness of a pencil. Right next to the asparagus is my chives, which I've already actually cut some chives off. I like to cut them off, take them in the house, let them dry out on the counter, and then I have a little jar that I put them in after they're dried, and I eat them throughout the winter. Over here I've got some rhubarb that's coming in good. I started these last year is when I planted them. So I really didn't get to eat any last year, but hopefully I will this year. Next to that I have some peppermint that's coming back and some spearmint that's starting to sprout up and coming back. And next to that is parsley. I planted that parsley last year. Never knew that it would overwinter. I did have it under some Agribon fleece, so that probably helped a little. But I had no clue that parsley was perennial. And there's Mrs. Scarecrow. My mom made that for me. In this bed here, which it's just starting to sprout up along with some weeds, but I planted some beets. You can see some little beets, and then I've got the onions that I had planted in here. And right next to it, where I planted the carrots. Over here, I've got thyme. Oh, look at that little ant. He's carrying a dead bug. Right here I have some thyme, which, let's see, yep, there's some thyme. You can see it sprout. It's just starting to sprout. You can really barely see it. And then back here I've got some oregano. In this area here in front of my garden, I like to plant all flowers, which I have some tulip bulbs that are coming up. Right here is actually a miniature rose that's coming back from last year. Aren't these tulips just pretty? I alternated them, pink and purple tulips, but they're absolutely beautiful. Okay, now let's go over to the other area. Right here is where I planted 100 garlic bulbs in the fall, and I think they're doing pretty good. Nothing in this bed yet. This is where I'm going to plant my melons and some squashes. All right, let's walk over to this area and take off this fleece so we can see underneath of it. So this was spinach that I had planted in the fall, but it looks like the bunnies got to it and had themselves a nice feast. I've got some Japanese Swiss chard, and I've got, and I don't know how to pronounce this, but it is called Chijimisi green, which I've never grown this before. I'm super excited. This is supposed to be heat tolerant as well. So I'm looking for a spinach alternative in the warmer months. With chard that's in here, some gorgeous lettuce. Some more lettuces over here. I got some kohlrabi. And I had started all these from seeds a few months ago. Looking good, looking healthy. I planted some carrot seeds in this area and some turnips over here. And then I planted this whole area with radishes, which they're pretty spotty coming in. And on the back, I had lined the whole back with kale. And then eventually when I harvest the stuff out of here and the salad all, or the lettuce all bolts, I'm gonna plant broccoli over here. This area is pretty shaded. And then over here, I had transplanted some rhubarb, but the bunnies got to this as well. That's why I cover all of this with fleece. Now let's go over to the other area that I had planted some greens in. All right, this is the area that I plant green beans in that go up this trellis. But I planted some greens in here as well that I put underneath the fleece. Isn't that beautiful? I just love this. I love when things get lush and they grow and they're green and they're beautiful. So let's go through what I have over here. I've got some kale, and I've got some Swiss chard, and I've got more lettuces, and we've got some pak choi. Look at that. Look at how beautiful that is. I need to come out here and harvest that before it goes to seed. Okay, more kale. I know that I put some spinach in here. I planted radishes along the back. Look at that. Look at that. Look at how beautiful that is. Yep. And then some of that green that I don't know how to pronounce. Look at how beautiful that is. It's gorgeous. Gorgeous, gorgeous. I'm excited to see how things change over the season. I would highly suggest anybody, if you garden, to take pictures, to record videos, because to see how things grow, I find that absolutely fantastic. Let's check out the stuff that I have planted on my deck as of right now. My plan is to put a bunch of things on the deck because this is actually the part of the yard that gets the most amount of sun. I know it's crazy that my garden has more shade than my deck does, but that's kind of the way it happened. Let's check out the snap peas that I had just planted that was in my previous video. So some of them made it. We had a really windy day. It snapped some of them, but I'm excited. I'm gonna actually plant petunias that I started from seed that I have in my grow tent downstairs still, in the middle of those. This is some lettuce that was actually in my melon bed, and when I amended that melon bed, I transplanted them all in here. So you can see these are actually going to seed. They're climbing, but isn't that beautiful? Look at that lettuce. In here, I had a loofah gourd planted in here last year, which, actually I think that's a sunflower. Not sure what that is yet. That might be a sunflower. I didn't have sunflowers in here, but when you have birds, they bring them all over your garden. But you can see the cilantro that's coming back from last year. That's one thing, when you plant cilantro, the seeds are gonna drop and they're gonna constantly reseed themselves. Over here, I took some potatoes that I had left over from planting out in the bed, and I had planted them here, which none of them came up yet, but they didn't get planted for at least a week after those did over there. Okay, over here, I've got some lavender that's coming back, and I have 2 blueberry bushes that I have up here. This is a blue crop blueberry, and you can see the blooms starting. And then over here is the other blueberry, which this one's doing great. I mean, look at all of those. They're just so pretty when they bloom. I'm excited for blueberries. Over here is my compost bin. Really nothing to see. I'll go over in a different video on how I do my composting here. Over here, we're in the process of making some beds. This one's already made, ready to go. I've already added some alfalfa, some gypsum, and some garden tone. I'm gonna try to grow corn here this year. I've never tried to grow corn before because I have mostly shade in my yard, but I found a variety that I think might grow, so I'm gonna give it a go. Oh, there's almost one. Now we're gonna walk to the back part of my yard. So I live in the lower Michigan, and my dad actually owns a motel up in the UP. The very first year when I bought this house, he brought me a tree from the UP. And of course, he brought it to me. I bought my house in the fall. I didn't really have a chance to come out here and plant the tree. I was moving and unpacking and, you know, getting my son ready. He was starting kindergarten that year. And I just let it go all winter. And then the spring came and I said, you know what, I really need to plant this tree. It's a hemlock pine that grows in the UP. You don't find them down here in the lower peninsula. Unless, of course, your dad lives in the UP and he happens to bring it down. But I planted this tree. I've lived in this house 10 years. So this tree's about 10 years old, but it's beautiful. In the winter time, they lose all of their needles, and they're super soft needles.
Yeah, they are.
And they get the cutest little pine cones. Now, behind my house, there's an easement, and I planted raspberry plants last year. Yeah, and they're sprouting, they're coming in good. Look at all that green. This raspberry is a golden raspberry. This raspberry is a Canby raspberries. I left the tags on them so I could try to remember, but yeah, this is coming in good. Didn't really get a lot of raspberries because we planted them last year. This one is called a Heritage raspberry. And this is a Latham raspberry, but yeah, they're coming in good. I'm super happy. Look at their side shooting way over here. I'm excited about that. And I took strawberries and I transplanted them, and I'm gonna do the same thing again in the fall, all of my runners. So hopefully I can make this entire area a ground cover and then have raspberries growing on the top of it. That would be great. So I don't have much going on just yet. Everything's just starting to sprout. Pretty much just the greens that are coming in full at this point. Okay, so that about sums everything up that's outside. I'm gonna take you in the house and I'm gonna show you my grow tent area and everything that I have going on in the house. So this is what happens when you do an experiment and say, hey, let's plant an avocado seed and see if it grows. We actually chopped the top of this off here, but the thing is huge and I'm not quite sure what to do with it now. So here we have my windowsill, and this is where I like to grow in the winter. This is my only south-facing window that I have in the house. But as you can see, I have, well, if you sort of see, I have some green tomatoes. That's my tiny tin tomato that I have here. And I've only got that in a very, very small pot. And I have a banana pepper plant that's right next to it. You can see one in there. I've been harvesting off of it already. There's another one. I've got some basil and my sweet potato slips and some rosemary, and then I have some more green onion that's in there. I know it's kind of a mess, but I've got dill and kale and another oregano plant and another rosemary plant. But yeah, this is my packed full of plants windowsill that I like to grow on. All right, here is my grow tent, and this is where all my little babies are at that I will be putting out here in probably 3 weeks, I want to say, depending on the weather. But I've got my tomatoes, which are getting really tall. They're climbing above my light there. I've got some tomatillos, which I did start them too early, note for next year. But you can see all of the blooms on my tomatillos that are back there. I need to pull those off. So that's all up here. I've got some celery. I mean, this celery is ridiculous. Look at how big it is. My celery has never gotten this big before planting it outside. It's actually starting to suffer because I need to get it outside. I've got some petunias here. I started some loofah gourds, which I did grow that last year. Down here, I've got some peppers that are climbing up. We've got some hot peppers, some 5-color, some death spiral. We've got some reapers back there. It's becoming a madhouse in here. I've got some more peppers, some red bell peppers, some rainbow bell. I've got some more banana pepper started. This is a Cubanelle that's back here. All right, let's go down to the next level. Here I've got some Advarsky peppers. Back here is some Anaheim peppers, and then I think I've got some Nato Pinos that are back there. This is a whole tray of petunias, and you can see, look at how pretty that is. It's already starting to bloom. I couldn't bring myself to cutting that off. I have another one that's starting too here, but that's okay. Petunias will continue the entire season. And then I've got ground cherries, and I planted some patty pan squash. It looks like it's coming up there. And then I have some eggplants in the back here. Flowers aren't doing the greatest. I've definitely learned that I need to start them a little later than I did. I've got some asters that are back here that are really starting to suffer. They're being deficient. I should transplant them up, but I don't really have any extra room. This weekend I will be starting all of my squashes and my melons and getting those going. Over here I've got some basil that's really starting to suffer as well. I already cut some of it down, and some parsley back there and some Swiss chard. Yeah, those are looking kind of rough, but that's okay. You learn every year. I'll have to start them later next year. So thanks for joining me on my beginning of the season garden tour. I am hoping to do another garden tour as things progress and as things grow, so I can show you and I can keep it for my own record to know how things are doing for the season. If you like my videos, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I'll see you on the next one.